thanks for everyone coming in. It's a busy little room here. I think we might take a picture and send it across to the AX guys. Next room. Okay, so we're talking about Dynamics NAV, and we are talking about the roadmap in this session. So we're going to give you a roadmap update. We're going to talk about deployment options as well, some licensing, and then Craig is going to show you some of the cool new stuff. So, for those of you who haven't been here before, so my name is Derek Lamb. I'm a solutions specialist based in Auckland, working mainly on the Dynamics NAV product. And my co-partner is Craig Keenan.
Yep, Craig Keenan. So I think I've met a good number of you over the years while we've been doing this dog and pony show stuff here. So 13 years, long time, and yeah, really wore a lot of hats during those years as well. Probably over the last 6 or 7 years, been predominantly focused on projects and services type solution implementation. So a lot of the scenarios and stuff I'll talk through a bit later during the day, they tend to reflect that. So apologies if that's not quite you.
Okay, so there may be someone here that are looking at NAV, or maybe it's been a while since they've heard about it. So Dynamics NAV is a worldwide product. It's been probably the largest seller that Microsoft's had for quite a while. I know CRM is definitely starting to overtake it. They've probably had about 3,000 ads in the last year, so that's quite a lot. It is Microsoft's focus for adding new customers going forward. So what does that mean to you? It means that there's a lot of customers already. There's a lot of partners, as you can see, focusing on developing new functionality on top of what Microsoft brings. There's a lot of users, some really good user forums out there, some really good user conferences. There's one happening this week, I think, in the States, which is a NAV user group forum. And it's spread throughout the world. We deal with people from Iceland and partners, from all over Europe, Australia. So there's a lot of breadth and depth in the product, and it's being continued going forward. So the roadmap. So Dynamics NAV 2013 came out last year. Quite a lot of new functionality. The web and SharePoint clients were probably the big piece of the new functionality, and they were gearing up for the large-scale hosting. Okay. And I think really what we're now seeing with Dynamics NAV 2013 R2, which was released October 1st, is the polished or the finished solution to NAV 2013. And the reason I say that is probably the big thing is the web client. So they did release the web client in the previous version. The web client, which you're going to see later, is really a polished solution in this version. It really is something that you can push onto a lot of the users. They've added cache management tools, which has been probably a thorn in our side for a long time. Things like EFT and bank reconciliations should have been standard in the product a long time ago. They are now. Integration with Office 365. So this is going to be Microsoft's push with a lot of their products. So Craig is going to show you a bit of the web client, but the integration with Office 365 will allow you to be going to a subscription basis for all of your products potentially. So potentially getting rid of Exchange, having everything run on the cloud from Microsoft. And that'll be something you'll see with the next releases as well. They're really going to push that. And so they're already working on the new release. They are going to do releases every year. And on top of doing new releases, they're going to have to obviously make upgrades a lot simpler. So previously upgrades with NAV have been quite large. And so we're expecting them to provide a lot better tools. We're also finding a lot of people are steering clear of as much customization as perhaps they used to. So when implementations 5-10 years ago, people really wanted the system to do exactly what they want, or in worst cases, look exactly like their old system. People seem to be a lot more open now to out of the box, and so we're finding that will actually lead into less customization and less easier upgrades going forward. So their focus is it's going to be easy to implement, easy to use. You'll hear Microsoft, if you are in the sphere of Microsoft, they talk about rapid start services. They're talking about with this all the ERP products. So that's basically a base product to get going with, so having some configuration done. Amanda is going to talk a bit about Netball New Zealand's implementation and talk about using some of those configurations around that. So with the new release that come out, what are you getting in this new release? So the cash management tools I talked about, the import payroll data, we haven't spent a lot of time on that because we've got journal imports already. The automated bank reconciliation, which looks pretty good, and Craig is going to show a little bit of that. Some KPI web services based on the account schedule charts and graphs. And then the multi-tenant hosting is, while it may not, you may not see the benefit of that, what that means in the future is us as partners being able to put multiple clients on the same database and infrastructure, which will then drive down the costs of the hosting. So other products like CRM have had this for a long time. ERP's catching up. The one Microsoft, 2009, they were pushing the Microsoft convergence, I guess. And so, as we said, with this new release, it will be working with Microsoft 365. So that means you can be exporting from NAV into Office 365, Excel or Word, and also integrating with SharePoint. Does everyone know what Office 365 is? We live in this world all the time, so we sort of assume it is. But that's the online Office product, so email, your Excel, Word, SharePoint as well. Okay. So I guess what you're going to see is a product, maybe not quite this release, but very soon, that is completely web-enabled. You'll be able to log on through subscription pricing and start up your CRM, your NAV, your Office as well. So again, the services, you won't notice anything as far as the client use, but really what this means is we'll be able to host Wheel as an Intergen or other providers of Dynamics NAV on Windows Azure. Okay, so in the cloud. We're going to actually show you a solution running on Windows Azure. Again, to a client, it won't really be any different to having it locally hosted, apart from the fact you've got excuse me, the redundancy and the backup that Microsoft's going to provide with the Windows Azure platform, which is Microsoft's cloud platform. And along with that, some services around how we can host that and administer that. And the web client. So the web client will be the push from Microsoft going forward. They have made enhancements to the Windows client, and we will see the Windows client being the go-to client for at least the next couple of releases. But I think we're probably going to see the majority of the work from Microsoft going into the web client. Okay? And that will just allow that continuation into the cloud. So Office 365 interoperability, that's a tricky one to say. The screenshot isn't fantastic there, but what we're going to be able to see is a single sign-on. So that means signing on to one place to see information from Dynamics NAV, as well as potentially CRM, which also works with Office 365. Perhaps pulling some information from an Excel chart and having that surface on a single role center, as you can see there. Okay, so really getting to perhaps where Microsoft have been talking about for a long time, of having that one place to go to see everything that is Microsoft related. It's going to be deploying NAV within the SharePoint client or the Office 365 SharePoint client, that is. Okay, and as I say, so being able to export NAV lists or import to and from Office 365, the Excel or Word. Okay, so at the moment you can import and export from NAV with using your standard Office that's installed on your machine. But this is just taking it a step further. So making the Office 365 perhaps a better solution going forward. So some of the things, and Craig is going to talk a little bit about this when, perhaps later on this afternoon in his focus group, but perhaps seeing project-specific portals would be a great solution for this. Budget contribution reviews, purchase order approvals, so those light limited users for this current version of NAV. So deployment options. These haven't changed from the previous version, but I do think it's perhaps a confusing spot because Microsoft has given you as users a lot of choices. So there are 3 client options, okay? The Windows client, the web client, and the SharePoint client. You get all 3 when you go to Dynamics NAV 2013. Okay, there is no extra cost. They also run on the same code base. So if you make changes, you only make them in one place and are available on all 3 clients. Okay. Which clients you use will really depend on perhaps your infrastructure or the type of users you would have. So the Windows client will be your go-to client for your power users still. The Windows client works over the internet. Okay, so you don't need to be using the web client to be using either a hosted or over the internet. Okay, and the SharePoint client would be for those who have SharePoint or are going down the SharePoint route. The SharePoint client or the SharePoint framework allows you to put any page from NAV inside a SharePoint page. Okay, so the benefit of perhaps the SharePoint client over the web client is that this is done in your portal. It's branded with your company information. It can be in the same place that you've perhaps got a lot of your reporting, document storage, that sort of thing. Okay, but if you're not going down the SharePoint route, then obviously the web client may make a better solution for the light to limited users. Okay. Craig is going to show you a bit of this, but the Windows client has been enhanced to look a lot more like the Office 365 functionality. We've got the charting, and that was available in 2013. The activities have changed slightly, more of that Windows 8 look and feel. So as I said, Office 365 themed and some more improved charting capabilities than we had with 2013 even. So the web client is where they've put a lot of the work in this version, and it looks really good compared to the 2013 client. Okay, so the 2013 web client didn't give you any of the charting capabilities. You didn't get any of the activities. There was a few things that was missing, like the ability to run account schedules or navigate on transactions, and that's all in this version now. Okay, so Craig is going to show you a bit of look and feel, but it really is a solid option for a lot more users now than it was in the previous version. It does work on all browsers. The benefit obviously compared to the Windows client is zero deployment. As I mentioned, it's the same development environment, and it inherits the display settings from the Windows client. So what that means is the power is in your hands to make this look the way you want. So if you're providing this to certain roles in your organization, just using the Windows client, you can configure how it looks and feels. And then there is no development required to roll that out to all those roles. So, you know, purchase approvers, budget, contributors, anything like that, you can actually give them a role, how you want it to look. There is no development required at all. And then the SharePoint client, or it's a SharePoint framework. This is a screenshot of what you're going to see in the focus groups today, is that right? Mm-hmm. So this is a SharePoint portal, okay? And what we've got is some Dynamics NAV data showing here, okay? To show this data really is quite simple. It is really, well, almost a right click, add this page. So there's no development required, and you can add any page. By adding the front page, you actually get all the functionality behind it. So, you know, in typical hyperlink capability, you drill down on that job, you get all the abilities that you would in the Windows client or the web client to add new jobs or make changes to this job, change the budget, perform transactions. So it really is, we are finding it will be a really good solution going forward, okay, for those that are going down the SharePoint route. And as I mentioned, it's a framework rather than a configured portal. Okay, so it's not an out-of-the-box employee portal. We used to have the employee portal back in with NAV a couple of versions ago, which this gives you a lot more functionality. So as I say, you can show any page, any list, any report that you want to in SharePoint. So, I think I know from talking internally that I have, whether it was me or whether it just is quite confusing, but you can use any combination of these and there is really no extra cost. So you get all the 3 clients out of the box. You can deploy the Windows and web client with no extra cost apart from the install of the Windows client. The SharePoint Framework does require those pages to be exposed in SharePoint. So if you've got SharePoint people, they can do that. Otherwise, that's something we can help you out with. And then now we have all 3 deployment models. Okay, so probably the majority of people in the room are using on-premise. That's been NAV's traditional strength, and it will continue to be, I think. Talking to Microsoft, it still seems to be where the majority of the sales are, even though we've got these other options. So Intergen and many other partners will provide partner-hosted solutions. Okay, so that will be, in our case, hosted in New Zealand. You'll be accessing over the internet using the Windows client or the web client. Okay, you can move between these as well. Okay, so for those of you on-premise at the moment that are looking at an upgrade, you can bring your license and move to partner-hosted. You can also now move to Windows Azure. Okay, so the difference between these two really is that they've just got a bigger data center and it sits outside of New Zealand. There's a few other differences, but really the experience to the user will be exactly the same. You'll be using, more than likely, one of these 2 clients. Okay? But this will be hosted in Singapore for the next year, and then there'll be data centers in Australia maybe by this time next year.
So Derek, given your experience now, do you know with 2013 whether the user experiences a real difference in terms of latency compared to